As we enter the third year of Lionel Messi in Miami, the second full season, all eyes will be on the Argentinian World Cup champion and Inter Miami to see whether this can be the year that they make that step up and win MLS Cup. They may have won Supporters' Shield, but suffered a disappointing exit to Atlanta United in the first round of the playoffs last year. There is, however, a new man at the helm, Javier Mascherano. He takes over from Tata Martino, and he'll have the responsibility of leading Leo, Lucho Suarez, Sergio Busquets, Jordi Alba, and the rest of the team to glory. Inter Miami correspondent Lizzy Becherano-Cohen is here to discuss what this season holds. Lizzy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So Tata Martino's gone. Javier Mascherano, a friend of Messi, former teammate, of course, for Argentina and Barcelona. He's, in many ways, he ticks many boxes. I've got my own thoughts, but let me ask you, somebody that covers this club, will it make a difference? What do you see out of Mascherano straight from the bat? What do you expect?
It's a very interesting addition to the club. I don't know if he is the one to make the difference, but I'm not sure anyone of his caliber would. It's a very interesting dynamic, and Jorge Mas, Inter Miami co-owner, explains a little bit his reasoning of adding Mascherano to the club, given that it's his first professional experience. He's never coached a club before. He was with the Argentina youth teams prior to joining for a couple years, but has never really led a club. And he said, we don't want MLS experience. That wasn't the principal criteria. We wanted someone who could manage kind of the star-studded locker room, someone to manage these personalities. And in that sense, I do think they got their guy. I do think that Mascherano knows how to manage this locker room. I mean, he knows Suarez, he knows Busquets, he knows Alba, he knows Messi from being their teammate, but he also knows a couple of the younger players after leading them with the Argentina youth team. So it's an interesting dynamic, and he does fit that criteria. It's an interesting situation for a very unique team.
Yeah, I mean, a very unique team indeed, for all the reasons that, people can find out throughout your reporting, our coverage, of course, of Inter Miami. Everybody knows this. Here's the thing and I'm wondering your thoughts about this, because, I understand where Jorge Mas is coming from. You don't need MLS experience. I guess it's all about how you handle personnel. I mean, Tata Martino, the former Inter Miami manager, he did wonders with Atlanta United, and it was his first stint as well in the country. Obviously, Miguel Almirón and a new stadium, all that made to pay due. But, I was watching Mascherano's first interview or his presser, as well as the videos that have come out with MLS, and him saying that this kind of came out of the blue for him. Like, he was taking care of the youth setup in Argentina, literally just finished an Olympics as well. And then boom, he got offered this role. So it's intriguing to me on how he's going to manage this, especially because he's dealing with people who are his friends, right? As well as obviously being his players. So we know that Messi rules the land. Mascherano's the head coach, but this is Messi's team. So let's go with that one. How much can Mascherano and Miami get out of Leo Messi this season? We know that he's going to give it his all, but he's turning 38 years old. The clock, sadly, is ticking. Time waits for no man, and sadly, not for arguably the greatest player the game has ever seen. But how much can Miami get out of Messi, and what can Mascherano do to make sure that he keeps him happy, and at the same time, they become champions?
The answer to that first question really is as much as his body will give. We have seen Messi, and the way that Mascherano talks about Messi's mentality is he wants to play every single game. And we've seen it throughout the preseason as well. I mean, there's been 4 preseason games for Inter Miami, and he's played all 4 of them, and not for 25 or 30 minutes, but more so 60 to 70. And the reason he's substituted out is to conserve that energy heading into this upcoming season, given that last preseason was a little bit tricky for Messi, and that caused injuries and setbacks throughout the year. But Messi will play as much as he can. He is not content being on the bench. He loves participating. And at the end of the day, he wants to win it all. It'll be a difficult season to maneuver given the amount of tournaments that they're playing. It's 4 competitions: CONCACAF Champions Cup, Leagues Cup, MLS, and the FIFA World Cup. So understandably, not even just because Messi's 38, but no player can play all games for 90 plus minutes. That's almost 2 games a week with the current schedule, not continuing the month-long tournaments. So in order for this team to be successful, they have to maintain consistency and a high level when Messi's not playing, and conserve his energy to an extent that he's able to feature constantly throughout all games, all tournaments, without focusing specifically on one and giving his 100% to just one.
Yeah, essentially, that's pretty much what happened last season when he was playing Copa America. Inter Miami actually did pretty well without the services of Messi. Obviously, things got tougher, once they lost to Atlanta United and they were bowed out. But, one thing that I was looking at last season was that, and obviously Messi's the reigning MVP of the league, did so much in literally half a season. But the lingering question continues here. Because as you mentioned, it's making sure that the rest of the team remain consistent without him, with him, whatever. But now I'm looking at depth, Lizzy, for 2025. What has the club done to strengthen this team? Because my number one question mark for Miami last season was not necessarily offensively. It was defensively. I was worried about their strength when they didn't have the ball. Case in point, when they lost to Atlanta United. So what have Miami done in terms of the squad and how they're looking? Because also Chris Henderson is gone. He's gone to Atlanta United. So, there's a lot of things that they have to do to shuffle this roster. So who's in, who's out, what's been going on?
I think the team did quite an interesting job this offseason. They added a bunch of players. I think there's been 6 signings total. They've added young players that have the ability to play multiple roles and aren't so injury prone. And I think that's the smart aspect about these signings. Fafa Picol, MLS experience, winger that can play on both sides. I mean, you have Gonzalo Luján, who can play like right back and center back. You have these dual ability players that can fill different roles throughout the season, depending on Inter Miami's need. They were quite limited last season in that 1 injury or 2 injuries really limited the capacity of this team. And at the end of the season, we saw it with Atlanta United. I mean, Sergio Busquets and Yannick Bright weren't available, and their midfield was struggling. I mean, Tata Martino really had to Frankenstein that lineup in order to make it work. And so this year, they didn't go for necessarily shiny names. I think they went smarter, and they got players that they know that they're going to need in order to maintain consistency. They need these players who can do multiple things in order to maintain the attention on Leo Messi.
Yeah, they needed the metal. They needed to strengthen that roster. I mean, Maxi Falcon from Colo Colo, the center back, is a really good addition. Velasco Segovia, the Venezuelan that comes from Spain, the center midfielder. I'm looking to see what Fede Redondo is going to do in this season, because obviously he's got now more experience. So I'm agreeing with you. I think that they've done a much better job at looking stronger. All those competitions do worry me for Inter Miami, but we'll have to wait and see. All right, let's finish with this. Obviously, our Inter Miami reporter for ESPN, you've got a big piece coming out. I hear it's got a great name, by the way. Talk to me about essentially the cliff notes from this piece, because aside from the roster, aside from the team, aside from Mascherano being here and everything, location-wise, there's a lot going on as well. What's going on there?
Well, before we get into that one, I also want to shout out your book, Messi Mania.
Thank you. And I'll let my producer, Sam, see if he wants to edit or not edit that. I appreciate it.
Well, no, this piece, Messi Mania 2, came out today, and it really just highlights the craziness that these other MLS teams have catered to Inter Miami when hosting them throughout the season. I mean, you have a Sporting Kansas City, for example, who hosted Inter Miami in 2024. And they usually play in a very soccer-specific stadium, Children's Mercy Park. And when hosting Inter Miami, they moved to Arrowhead, which is Kansas City Chiefs' NFL stadium, and saw a huge turnout. New England Revolution broke their attendance record. I believe they hosted more than 66,000 fans when welcoming Inter Miami last season. And it goes way beyond the chaos that Messi brings to the league on the field. The way he's revolutionized these communication tactics, stadiums, matches for MLS is truly a wonder that we hadn't seen with other large figures. I mean, MLS has been host to great names. Ibrahimovic, Beckham, obviously, Thierry Henry, like the league has not been short of great names. But with Messi, it was revolutionized. Like Vancouver Whitecaps hosting tailgates and letting their fans know of players from the other team that aren't traveling when the whole scandal broke that Messi wasn't going to go to the game. So it really just highlight and encapsulate the chaos that he's brought onto the United States.
Yeah, we're going to be seeing a lot of that. And also, as you mentioned, of course, the Club World Cup in the summer, regardless of how the roster changes, it's going to be big. So it's a really big one. Okay, let me just ask you one last question before we move on. They won the Supporters' Shield that season, top of the Eastern Conference. Everybody was like, okay, you're looking great. They broke the single points record as well in the regular season. Who's in their way? Specifically from the Eastern Conference and maybe in the playoffs? Like, is there somebody there that's saying, okay, we've got your number? Because obviously not everybody's going to be a problem for Inter Miami, but is there anybody that's in the way of Inter Miami, do you think, that can stop them from winning MLS Cup?
Inter Miami. It sounds silly, but I think they truly would be in their way depending on how they navigate the season. If Mascherano decides to focus solely on CONCACAF Champions Cup, doesn't cultivate the energy or hold off on injuries, they really are in their own way. There's not one specific team that I would consider a front runner over Inter Miami, but I do think the way this team handles itself can either be a help or a hinder in their season.